All right, today we're diving into something that honestly probably touches millions of us, all guided by a really fascinating new study. It's about a medical mystery that we see play out in hospital rooms everywhere.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Maybe you've seen it with a parent or a grandparent. They get through a really serious illness, which is amazing. But then, the recovery is just brutal. It's this long, slow slog. They just seem so much weaker, more frail. So what is actually going on inside their body? Why is it so incredibly hard to bounce back?
Well, it turns out scientists are now saying it's not just one single thing. Nope, it's more like a devastating combination, a real perfect storm of factors. And they've got a name for it, the triple threat to our muscles.
Okay, so let's break down this triple threat. First up, you've got sepsis. This is a massive, life-threatening, whole-body freakout to an infection. Then, number 2 is disuse. I mean, just think about being stuck in a hospital bed, not moving. Your muscles just waste away. And the third piece of the puzzle? Aging. You know, as we get older, our body's natural ability to repair itself just slows way down. So what the study really wanted to know is, what happens when all 3 of these things hit you at the exact same time?
So how in the world do you even begin to study something so complicated? Well, this is where it gets clever. The researchers basically recreated this entire triple threat scenario in the lab. They used a mouse model so they could get a front row seat, a microscopic view of exactly what's happening inside those muscles.
And their setup was really smart. Here's how they did it. First, they took 2 groups of mice, young ones and older ones, to account for that aging factor. Then, some of those mice were given sepsis, while a control group got a harmless procedure instead. Step 3 was to mimic that bed rest, that disuse. So for 7 days, they suspended one of the mice's hind limbs so it couldn't be used. And finally, after all that, they let the mice recover for a few days to see just how well, or how poorly, those muscles could bounce back.
And the results? Honestly, they're pretty staggering.
Okay, so let's look at the young mice first. When they were hit with sepsis, their survival rate was actually pretty high, more than 84%. So their younger bodies could handle that initial shock. But, and this is a big but, that's pretty much where the good news stops. Now check this out. The older mice, their survival rate just plummeted, down to about 55%. So right off the bat, we have our first huge clue. Age is an absolutely massive factor here. It makes you so much more vulnerable from the get-go.
But look, survival is only one piece of the puzzle. The real story, the real damage, was happening deep inside the muscles. When you combine sepsis and disuse, it unleashes this huge spike in inflammation. We're talking a 4 to 8 times increase in inflammatory cells. And let's be clear, this isn't the good kind of inflammation that helps you heal. Oh no, this is like a destructive tidal wave, just tearing the muscle down from the inside.
Okay, quick science detour, because you need to know this for the next part. It's something called cross-sectional area, or CSA. Just think of it as a way to measure how thick and beefy an individual muscle fiber is. A big CSA means a strong fiber. A small CSA means that muscle is wasting away.
And guess what? That destructive inflammation we just talked about, it had a direct physical result. In just 1 week, the muscle fibers shrank by a crazy amount, anywhere from 27 to 46%. I mean, think about that. That is incredibly fast, severe muscle wasting.
Okay, this next part, this might be the most important finding of the whole study. So, our muscles have their own little repair crew, right? They're called satellite cells. In a healthy muscle, you've got a whole team of them, like 39 per section in this study. But after this triple threat hit, that repair crew is just gone. It dropped from 39 down to 2. Let that sink in. Your muscle is being actively destroyed, and at the exact moment you need your repair crew the most, they've been almost completely wiped out. It's a double whammy.
But it gets even more complicated. The study found that this damage, and more importantly, the recovery, wasn't the same for everyone. It turns out there's another huge factor at play: your biological sex. And this is just fascinating. When the mice started to recover, males and females struggled in completely different ways. For the males, the big problem was persistent weakness. Their muscles were there, they just couldn't generate any force. But for the females, the issue was persistent atrophy. Their muscles just wouldn't grow back. See, 2 totally different long-term problems, which probably means they need 2 totally different treatments.
And the scientists think they know why, at least for the males. When they looked closely at the male mice's muscles, they found a buildup of what's basically internal scar tissue.
And you can imagine how that would gum up the works, right? It makes the muscle stiff and prevents the fibers from contracting properly, which would totally explain that specific problem of weakness.
Okay, so we've been talking about mice. What does all this mean for us? For that loved one in the hospital bed we talked about at the start? How do we connect these dots from the lab to real life?
Well, this quote from the researchers themselves really sums it all up. They say that disuse, being immobile, amplifies the damage from sepsis. It doesn't just add to it, it makes it way, way worse. And on top of that, how you get hurt and how you recover is totally different depending on your age and sex. And those first few steps of recovery, they just aren't enough.
So why does all this matter? What's the bottom line? Well, a few big things. 1, we finally have a really clear picture of why a long hospital stay can be so absolutely devastating, especially for older folks. 2, it shows that recovery isn't just a matter of trying harder. You can't just walk it off when your internal repair crew has vanished and your muscles are full of scar tissue. And 3, and this is maybe the most hopeful part, it shows us that we need to think about recovery differently for men and women. Maybe treatments for men should focus on breaking down that scar tissue, while for women, it's all about kickstarting that muscle regrowth.
And that's really where this leaves us. This research throws open the door to a huge critical question. Now that we know about this triple threat, what are we going to do about it? How can we protect our muscles when they are at their most vulnerable? How do we make sure that for our loved ones, recovery isn't just a long shot, but a full, complete return to strength?